All right, we are live, and I'm excited to introduce you to today's guest. On today's episode, I interview a yogi, a dancer, an adventurer, and a lover of life. She now spends much of her time in New York City studying with her teacher, Sri Dharma Mittra. She completed his 500-hour, 800-hour, and 1,000-hour teacher trainings and is the mentor in the Dharma Yoga Center's Life of a Yogi teacher training programs. She's also created her own 200-hour Abhyasa living yoga teacher training program and offering designed for students with a desire to live their yoga practice 24/7. Welcome to the winner circle, Sam Manchulenko.
Thank you.
I'm
Thank
really
you for
excited to
inviting me.
Of course, I'm really excited to explore your incredible hero's journey. The goal of these conversations are to really uplift, inspire, and empower everyone tuning in, listening in, to move forward with greater faith and belief in themselves on the hero's journey ahead, now. And the first question sets us up on a really positive note, and that is, Sam, what you love about your personal world right now? Not about the external world, but what you love about your personal world right now?
My personal world. What do I love about my personal world right now? Hmm. I better talk more quickly. I realize when I sit in these questions, I can sink into some delicious silence for a long time, and that's probably not the best for podcast land. What do I love most about my personal world? I am a student. My whole life is about being a student. And I've always been curious about what is unconditional love. I feel like that's what I'm here for. I want to learn in this life, what is unconditional love? What does it really mean to just love, to not label things as good and bad? And um, I've been studying a lot with Byron Katie. I just finished my third school for the work with her. And what's alive in my own personal world, this incredible gratitude for her work and how I can feel it's rewiring me and helping to, those all those ideas and thoughts of who we think we are, how her work is just like the sunshine. It's shining on a lot of them, and I can feel a lot of old sticky ideas dissolving. And I'm learning to love the ones that are still there. Those old sticky ideas that are still there, not to try to fight them or resist them or push them away, but to befriend them, to welcome
Mhm.
them into my heart and yeah, see what happens.
Beautiful. Well, there's so many questions I could delve off of from there. So let's start with those sticky ideas. What are some sticky ideas you have let go of, and what are some you're still in process of discarding?
Wow. I don't know. I think it's all a dance. So I don't know if I've ever completely let go of a sticky idea. I think they've danced away and then different chapters, they've come back like a different aspect of them.
Uh,
The main thing the real purpose of yoga is to realize, who are we beyond the limitations of the mind and the senses? Who are we really? And who we really are is eternal, beyond time, beyond location, beyond form. So all of the sticky ideas are some type of quality, some type of idea that tries to solidify us into a state. I am this, you know? And as long as we know that these qualities they're just vibrations moving in and moving out, it's really no problem what we wake up with. Oh, today I noticed this is moving through, today that's moving through. But when we identify with them and we think that we are them, that's when it becomes an issue. And my life has been a journey in perfectionism. So, this idea, I was a dancer growing up, and the motto of dance is, you're not good enough, you'll never be good enough. The leg can always be higher, the jump can always be higher. And to get to that goodness, there's this pushing and forcing and striving and a really strong identification as the physical body. And as I've aged, I feel less and less identified as this physical body. I'm grateful for it. I think it allows us to do many things, but I know it's not mine. I feel like it's a costume that, love, the divine, doesn't have any senses of perception. So it needs us to express itself through. And I feel grateful to have this costume, this body to express through. But I think the biggest shift in my life would be the relationship with my body. So my sticky idea when I was younger, I was 100% this body. My first depression in my 20s, my first career was dance. And I suffered a bad back injury and had to stop. And I was so angry at my body for ruining my fun and my life. And I went into quite a depression because all I wanted to do growing up was dance. And then, okay, here's my dream, I'm living it, and it got taken away. So really looking forward, I was like, there's nothing else I want to do. I don't want to get married and have a station wagon. I don't want any other jobs. I just was killing time, like, how long until I die? How long is this going to go for? And I remember I went to like a psychic in my 20s who told me I was going to live to be 94. And I don't swear that often, but I swore. And she said, don't worry. By then, you're really going to want to be here. And I'm happy to say I do really want to be here now. My relationship with my body has changed. It really healed. Not, I could say through yoga, but it's not the physical yoga that healed it. It was meditation, like really learning to quiet down the mind and experience who are we behind the thoughts. So my body healed, and then I actually was able to dance again and danced in, lots of shows. I was the old lady in the show, like dancing longer than is to be expected. But before every show, instead of being at the theater pushing my body and forcing it and complaining about it, I would do a gratitude meditation. I'd go through every part. I realize how much joy the big toe gives me, the pinky toe, right? When we have a tiny little injury, we realize, oh, wow, you're doing so much for me. So I think that would be the biggest sticky idea, is changing from this idea that the body owes me and it should do more and it should be better, to actually recognizing, oh, wow, thank you. The body is unconditional love. It's just constantly giving. And I can see when I was younger, I never thanked it. And it wasn't even that I didn't appreciate it, but it was that I was brutal to it. It was an abusive dynamic. I always told it, I was mean to it, and it still kept doing its best, kept showing up, kept trying to do well while I put terrible food in it, and, healing after I overworked it and underslept it. And it just keeps letting us feel the sun on our face, and it lets us hug people, and it lets us speak. Like, it's unconditional love, the body. So that's the biggest one, I would say, at this point.
Mm-hmm.
Sure.
So you mentioned meditation, and your gratitude meditation that you do to all your body parts. Is that something you do regularly? Like, what does your daily meditation, or what does your meditation practice look like these days?
Yeah, that also dances too. Um, but yeah, I do. It's an aspect of it for sure. That meditation happened to me spontaneously, to go through the parts and to thank them. And then years later, I went and did Vipassana. And Vipassana, you're not thanking, but you are paying attention, from part to part. It's basically a body scan. It seemed familiar to me. So I would say, yeah, generally my meditation practice, I have a mantra that I work with, and I I I think of going through all of my body parts with it. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And acknowledging the divinity within this body.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Mm.
Beautiful. One question that I ask every guest at the start of our conversations pertains to their mission. So in your bio, I listed like a bunch of different roles that you play, different hats that you wear. But through all your roles, whether that be as a yogi, a dancer, adventurer, teacher, friend, et cetera, what would be your personal overarching mission that guides you in everything that you do, Sam?
To learn what love is. Yeah, to learn what love is, and um, and everything shows me. life shows me what I don't know how to love yet. It shows me what I don't love in myself yet. It's all a mirror. Do you know, there's a beautiful, I love Rumi so much. I love the Sufi poets. Do you know the beautiful poem, Out Beyond Ideas of Wrongdoing and Right Doing, There is a Field?
No, please share.
Okay. Out beyond ideas of wrongdoing and right doing, there is a field. I'll meet you there. When the soul lies down in that grass, the world is too full to talk about. So the ideas of right doing and wrongdoing, that's the ego's work, right? To say this is good, this is bad, it should be this way, it shouldn't be this way. And when we get beyond all of those ideas, there's this field of, there's no words to describe it, right? Everything we say, even right now, I can't tell you the essence of yoga in words. The words are too limited. The body's too limited. So my journey is, how can I spend more time in that field? And when I notice that I'm really attached to an idea of right doing or wrong doing, what can I learn? How can I soften that attachment? And, you know, I'd say I'm really a student, and I share what I learn as I go, but I'm really here to learn that. And whoever wants to hear, you know, to learn from what I've experienced, I'm happy to share. But everything I've learned is I kind of need to learn things the hard way. I have to experience them, go through them, and learn that way.
I really like your emphasis on being like the learner, the student. One of my teachers, Ryan Lear, he talks about PK Sangard talking to him and teaching how he is a senior learner and a junior teacher. And
Yeah,
that's
my
from a
teacher,
master.
Sri Dharma Mittra, is the same. Dharma's turning 85 this year. He's so humble. He's just like a child and playful. And he is, you know, one of the wisest beings I've ever sat with. But he often will say, "Oh, I don't know." And he asks people questions, and he'll say things to us, "Oh, I hope one day you find a good teacher with these good qualities." And we're like, "Hello," you know, but he doesn't, he considers himself a teacher. And Katie as well, Byron Katie, she always says, "Oh, I'm a student, I'm a student," which she also, to me, you know, I spent a lot of time working and studying at a yoga ashram. And a lot of the teaching at the yoga ashram was through tough love. And I remember one year just being like, oh, I want to learn. I want someone to show me how to live instead of how I don't want to live. There was a lot of great at the ashram. I don't mean to be knocking it, but a lot of the teachers that I attracted there, I felt like they were showing me ways that I didn't want to be in the world. And one day I was so frustrated and just said, I just want to be in the presence of an enlightened being. Is that too much to ask? And then this little voice said, okay, time to go study with Dharma. And I feel now like Dharma and Byron Katie, and I also study with Eckhart Tolle. To me, I don't know who is enlightened, but the three of them, it feels to me they may be. You know, their vibrations seem the highest of any that I've sat with. And they're all so humble. They're students.
So from these three teachers, this is a question I was going to get to a little later, but we've been talking about them. So let's go to this question now, and just pertains to just different mentors and helpers you've met on your path. Three huge ones you mentioned are Byron Katie, Sri Dharma Mitra, and Eckhart Tolle, and you could add more. But what have been your biggest takeaways from those three individuals, and then any other mentors and helpers that you met on your path that have really left a notable impact on your personal and professional growth?
Okay, well, Dharma first. You know, okay, here's another one of those sticky thoughts I'll come back to. I used to study Ashtanga. I did Mysore practice. And I would often feel depressed. I would go and I had this desire to swirl and sing and move in a different way. I felt almost claustrophobic in my body in the practice. I think it's a great practice. This is my own personal experience. And I remember telling my teacher one day, and they said, oh, yes, just keep coming. That's the mind. I'm like, yes, it's the mind. I'll keep coming. But I really felt my energy was sinking. It was just something off. And then one day after class, that teacher said to me, you know, Sam, life isn't meant to be joyful. And that was the last time I practiced with them. And, you know, I don't think everything is about we're not to be attached to joy. I think grief, I think all the emotions are meant to flow through, but I do believe that our essence, I think who we are is bliss. And to me, that's, you know, joy. There's a connection there. But this question always growing up, am I allowed to be joyful, or is life supposed to be hard work? You know, are we allowed to celebrate life and be happy? Or is life a punishment? Kind of struggled with this. So, you know, so I had a lot of tough love forcing myself into things. And then I remember every time I would go to practice with Dharma, I could race from the airport right to the studio and often make the class. Dharma's very traditional. He's very reverent, very respectful. You know, he plays ancient mantras. And the end of this class, he turned on, we did the final Om, and then he put on this crazy techno song. Boop, 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 boop. And he got up and started shaking his hips and dancing and told everyone to get up and start dancing. The sweetest thing to watch this 80-year-old man smiling and jumping and dancing and, you know, loving the music. And then he went and stopped the music and said, joy is very important. And I started to bawl. I'm like, oh, here's a teacher who's, you know, he's so, you know, his own path. He was so disciplined and strict. He lived in his guru's ashram for over a decade. He shaved his eyebrows so women wouldn't be attracted to him, so he wouldn't get distracted from the path. Like he just really, you know, he practiced deep, but he says, I did everything I did, so you don't have to learn the hard way from me. I just share with you the most important. But he really, you know, he says the purpose of life is to experience everything. Everything. And to experience everything, we have to come back many times in many different costumes, right? So maybe, you know, in this life, oh, you want to be a yoga teacher, so you're born in this body, but you really want to be a basketball player. Don't worry, next life you'll be born in a nice body for playing basketball and a family there. And that life is this divine play. And he'll often say, you know, he teaches us, the practice we do with him is challenging, but he says, don't get too tense, don't get too attached. Craving and aversion are causes of suffering. And he'll say, don't get too strict. What's the purpose, the point of being alive if you don't enjoy the guacamole sometimes, if you don't taste it, right? So he really, yeah, there's just joy and love oozing from him and play. And he is so accepting of everyone in the room. Dharma is love. Whenever people come in the room, they're just on their best behavior. Everyone is welcome there. And everyone seems seen by him. So that's one piece. You know, he shared the permission, not just that joy is an okay thing to have, but it's important. Joy is important. Everything is according to our vibration. So that vibration, it ripples out, it affects others. If we're like tense and hard and pushing them, we're sending that vibration out. And then, you know, one of his quotes I say often, he says, one of the hardest things for people to accept is their own innocence. And this really comes down to understanding that we are not the doer. So our body is like a computer, right? And so this computer, it's got a nervous system. It's got all these different apps, a seeing app, a hearing app, talking app, you know. But if you can think of a computer or like a cell phone, the cell phone is nothing without the signal. We are not the cell phone. We are not the body. We are the signal. And our experience of life, how much of the signal is expressed, is determined by, you know, the cell phone set. If you have a big old cell phone from the 70s, the reception's not going to be as good. You're not going to be able to take pictures and, you know, If you have a really advanced iPhone, maybe you have an iPhone 95, you might even be able to see people's auras. You'll have an app that can tune into, you know, the chakras. Who knows, right? Everything is endless, infinite. But he tells us that often, like, so your body, you know, what it's doing, it's according to its conditions. And some bodies are older souls, some are younger souls, but the exact same signal, the same divine spark moves through every single body. And everyone is innocent. You can only do what your equipment can do. So for example, the chakras, he talks about the chakras. You know, I don't know, will everyone listening know what chakras are? Maybe I should say a little bit.
Yeah, maybe not. So maybe you
Yeah.
could go through them.
So chakras are like these energy centers. There's many in the body, but there's 7 main ones through our spine. And they're kind of like different software. So the lowest chakra, the root chakra at the base of the spine, if your energy is only piercing that chakra, that is your software that you'll perceive life through. So you'll perceive it from, you know, really needing to find a sense of home, or, you know, it'll be the lower 3 chakras are all about fear and survival. And we all have energy that moves up and down the spinal column, the main channel, but depending where that energy goes, will determine which chakra is active in you. So a younger soul, they have no choice. The energy can't come up to their heart chakra. They can't actually. So the heart chakra, the center of the chest, if your energy pierces that center, you are able to live with compassion. Compassion is the action of seeing yourself in others. So you naturally have that ability because the energy is piercing that center, that software is available to you. So understanding someone who doesn't have compassion, they're not bad, they're not wrong. Their equipment is such that their energy isn't there. And to understand the innocence that we aren't the body. The body is like technology for the self to perceive through. We are not the technology. We are the one that's perceiving through it.
Mm-hmm.
So much attachment and so much suffering comes from thinking that, oh, I'm this body. I should have been able to do better. I should have known better, and judging and punishing ourselves when the quote, the hardest things for us to accept our own innocence according to our conditions at that time. That was the best you could do. Byron Katie shares something very similar. She has us go back, think of a time in your life where you've done something you regretted. And now tune in, what were you thinking just a moment before you said that or did that? And she says, we're innocent, we're just believers. Anyone who thought and believed that thought would do the same. So that's, you know, that action. And she also is a huge teacher of love. Her first book is called Loving What Is. And she teaches us how to love reality, but also the ego. So many of us think, oh, the ego is this bad thing. I need to be at war with the ego. The ego is like a terrified child just trying to find home. So she teaches how to give the ego a home in your heart, how to see it. And instead of blindly following everything that it says, saying, oh, really, tell me more. And then allowing, you know, whatever emotions to come up, allowing it to be heard. And then you look at the opposite of whatever thoughts you were believing. And you usually find evidence the opposite of what you were believing is usually as true or truer. When you do that, you realize the ideas of right doing, wrong doing, they vanish.
Mm-hmm.
Just isness.
Mm-hmm. And Eckhart Tolle, he's another one of your mentors and teachers. What is a big takeaway you've learned from him?
Well, Eckhart is such an incredible teacher of presence. And, you know, if we're in the present moment, there's no suffering. All of the suffering is created by the mind. The activity of the mind is created by, you know, where your energy is, your chakras, all of this software. But all of the suffering is by the mind. And to even say the word takes time. Word, right? Even if I say it my fastest, word, it still takes time.
Mm-hmm.
If all our attention is in the present moment, the now, the only moment that really exists. Dharma used to have a watch. He put Om around Om, 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 Om. Eckhart shares that he had one now, 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 to remember to anchor in this moment. all our attention is here, there's absolutely nothing we need. There's no suffering.
Mm-hmm.
But in order to suffer, we need a window of time. So we need to imagine out into the future that something bad might happen, or we need to use our imagination and go into the past and think about something we didn't like that happened. Our only proof that it happened is imagined at this point. The only moment you can touch is the now. So he really powerfully teaches presence. And then my favorite teaching of his about love, love is the recognition of oneness. So when we're in the present moment, you really can feel the same mysterious force that's animating you is animating everything around you. Right? Same thing in me as in you. My eyes are looking, your eyes, it's the same thing looking at itself. Right? Divine doesn't have senses of perception, so it creates all these different senses of perception to be able to see aspects of itself, fractured pieces, but really it's whole and complete. You know, when we add all these pieces back together, which is our essence, we're all whole and complete. So love is this recognition of oneness, that it's all one.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's really very easy. It's very quite simple, but it's not what we're taught. And it's because we live in like a uh, commercial world, a capitalistic world that profit off of telling you like you are not enough, you are not complete. So we're being programmed with this from our television programming, from our culture, from parents, teachers. When did you bring awareness to this fact that what you're being told is not the truth? And when did you awaken and begin your path as a yogi?
I don't remember what happened, but I do remember in my early 20s having a moment where I realized my parents didn't know everything. So when I was a kid, I thought the adults knew everything and
Yeah,
that the adults always made the right decision. And if an adult made a mistake, they would go to jail for a little bit to think about it, and then they would be fixed and come out, and then it was fine, right?
yeah,
I really believed this. And then when in my early 20s, I'm like, oh, they have no idea what's going on. It really shook me. I'm like, oh, nobody knows what they're doing. And I suffered depression in my 20s and kind of got to the self-loathing was so intense, you know, first with the back pain, losing the career I loved, and then a relationship that I thought was the one, and then feeling behind everybody else, all this harsh judgment of, oh, my life is different than everyone else's. It's supposed to be like that. And I'm, this real lost feeling in my 20s. And yeah, the first thing so when I have a math degree, and when I hurt myself, I went and studied accounting, and I was an accountant, and I was so miserable. And they gave me a leave of absence to do a musical. And then when I did that, I'm like, oh yeah, I used to smile and laugh. I forgot. So I didn't go back. And then I ended up getting a job as a corporate recruiter. And I was like, no, I don't want to be behind a desk. And I would spend all my days kind of Googling, what can I do with my life? And really thought I was never going to have passion again. And I decided if there's anything that I'm remotely interested in, I just want to take it one step further and see what I can find. And my brother do you know of the Enneagram?
yeah.
So my brother studied the Enneagram in high school, and he'd always come home and talk about it. And I'd be like, that's a bunch of crap. You can't categorize people like that. And then he said, okay, well, read this. And he gave me the chapter on me, and it was so embarrassing, like just cut to all the motives. But it ended up being a tool that was really helpful for me. So I saw, when I was an accountant, the things that would stop me from quitting, that other people maybe perceived that as successful, and how I was stuck. So it was helping me to move out, get out of the box I was trapped in. So I decided, okay, anything that I'm remotely interested in, I'll take a step further. And I'm like, the Enneagram, I'm really interested in that. I went to go study it in the Poconos Mountains through the Enneagram Institute. And that was my first experience of meditation. And then I had this wild moment where I'm holding up hands to the podcast listeners. I was looking at these things, hands, and I couldn't believe, I'm like, what are these? And what am I doing in here? It was so clear to me that this wasn't mine, and just such a bizarre, they looked so funny. I didn't know what they were. I'm like, what are these things I'm in? And it was very healing for my relationship with my body. That was probably one of the first things I realized, oh, I'm not this. I'm in this thing. I don't know why I'm in this thing. So yeah, and then that led me, I'm like, what can you do with the Enneagram? And I went and studied coaching after that. And then it kind of led me towards yoga. First yoga, I went to yoga for physical. So when I was an accountant, I lived in Houston. I was working as an auditor, and this new thing, hot yoga, Bikram yoga, had started there. So I started doing that just as exercise. But eventually, yeah, it changed. Then I, you know, wanted to learn more about what's really behind this.
Mm-hmm.
I love Dharma says you don't have to do any poses to be a yogi. If you don't like the poses, just go swim or something. But it's all the foundation of yoga is compassion.
Yeah, well, I think that's like the thing with yoga in the North American world, I guess. It's like it's become an exercise, and the general population pays very little attention to the eight limbs of yoga. It's just that third limb, the asanas, the postures, and there's nothing wrong with that. Like as you said, that's how you started, that's how I started, and it gives you those moments of peace, of those stillness, of clarity, and that gives us a thread to further unravel and continue our learning. But it's beautiful that there's people like you and like myself too, who I'm very passionate about this as well, is just introducing people that yoga is so much more than the physical posture, it's just a way of living. It's tuning into that vibration on the mat, and so that we can embody that and take that off of the mat. And that's what you do with your 200-hour Abhyasa. I don't know if I'm saying that
Abhyasa.
right. Uh,
Abhyasa. Yeah.
Abhyasa living yoga teacher training, where it's really about teaching the students on living yoga and the importance of that, and expanding their view of what yoga can be. Can you get into the beginnings of that program and what students can expect to learn in it?
Yeah. We're going into our fourth weekend this week, but I love teaching it so much. And it is amazing, after the first 2 weekends, many of them said, I've already learned enough to be like, to feel like, oh, I got my money's worth. Like it's, so we go into, it's very guided. It's 3 months. We meet 9 weekends over the 3 months. Each weekend we go into a piece of the philosophy. So my first teacher training I did was like an intensive, and I loved the philosophy, but I really wanted to meet someone that lived it. And that's why I kind of went on this journey. Is there anyone out here that's living this? And, finally, that's what led me to ashrams and then eventually to Dharma. And to Katie and Eckhart, they're yogis. They just don't do the poses. So what we do the first weekend, we go into the piece of the philosophy. We explore, the purpose of yoga, which is to realize who we really are. And then yoga are all the techniques and practices we do that help us to realize this. We talk about the 4 paths of yoga. And then when we get into the 8 limbs, we have homework. So every day they have homework in pranayama and meditation, in self-reflection. The first week we explore the causes of suffering. So there's 5 causes of suffering in yoga, and they're to reflect on them each morning. And then at the end of the day, notice how did they show up in their day. And it's really, when we do this kind of, when we reflect on it in the morning and then watch through the day and notice when it came up, then noticing is the power, right? So then the next time we notice, in Dharma's training, we do a lot of reflection on ahimsa and compassion. And there's his teacher training program, there's about 3 hours of homework a day. And I remember when I was doing that in the ahimsa reflection I was there when Donald Trump was running for president the first time. And so I would hear something that was on the news. And I would go to open my mouth to say, did you? And then I realized, nope, that's harmful. That's going to decrease the vibration of this conversation. It's not necessary, you know? And so it was really amazing. Like it started helping me catch myself in moments before, or the tongue would make a sound, but then I can pull it back in and not have to go forward. So we, yeah, we really go into the philosophy, but they're guided to really start to notice it in their life. And how do you actually use it to start not abusing yourself with it? It can also be really, you know, when you think the foundation is compassion, some people can go out and be like, oh, I said this mean thing and I wasn't kind to them and I did this and oh, I'm a bad person. So when I focus on compassion, we focus first on the lens of self-compassion, understanding ourselves. If everything, you know, anything we can't see or love outside of ourselves, we don't have compassion for it in us either. So we do a lot of self-compassion work in those before we go out to, you know, outward compassion. And then the aspect of karma yoga, almost impossible, is doing your actions without expectations for the fruit and without attachment to the result. So really, like Eckhart, it's like just living in the present moment, whatever arises in the moment, following that, but not having this time, oh, I need this to happen and I need them to do this and I need, you know, all of that stuff. So, you know, I was raised Catholic, and, you know, the 10 Commandments and being good and being nice. I was doing that to try to be good, to try to save myself from going to this fiery hell, right? So it's very different. That's not karma yoga. If you're being generous out of fear, that's not the same as being generous out of love. So karma yoga is doing your actions because there's so much love in you. You're serving love, as opposed to the cause of all harm is fear. Any harm that happens on the planet, the cause is fear. So even though it may look outwardly, a lot of people, it looks outwardly like they're very nice, compassionate people, but they're people pleasers. They don't take care of themselves. They exhaust themselves. They suffer burnout. They tell themselves that they're not good enough. They push them. So all of this, right, is also harming. We don't see it on the outside. And then it can lead to bitterness, resentment. So we look at self-compassion first, and really learning to accept ourselves, to understand we're not the doer, to understand, you know, according to our conditions, how things happen. When we have greater self-acceptance, then we can act from love instead of trying to earn love. So our action comes from what we are instead of what the ego is trying to get. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. I feel like a lot of these thoughts and beliefs in individuals are caused by like deep scars, like deep programming. What have you learned about like erasing and rewriting those scars, that
Well,
programming?
yeah. I mean, you can just do the practice and it's happening, right? When you do your meditation, it's all going. But for me, the most powerful practice is Byron Katie's work. Those
Okay.
4 questions and the turnarounds to every thought. So she says we believe ourselves in to life and we can question ourselves out. So we believe ourselves in, you know, when we're born, well, it depends, you know, you can say you have some scars in you, which then it's good not to blame the culture. Oh, the culture told us this. And we were born into this culture because on some level we vibrated with those beliefs. So I often tell my students, don't blame your parents. They're not the origin story of what you're going through. They experienced it as well, right? Whatever they shared with you, they likely received that from their parents and so on and so on. And the reason we have these parents is because that vibration was already in us. They were the perfect people for us to be born with, to show us, right? So everything outside is a mirror. If we have the courage to see what's looking back at us and question it. I love in the Gita, is it verse 9, 24, 25? In Swami Shivananda's commentary, it talks about, you know, God is like the sun. It shines evenly on all beings. And we think that, oh, okay, it shines more on us if we're good and less if we're bad. And it says not so. It's impartial. So there is no anger on the part of God, because God is not affected by anything. God is formless, doesn't have opinions, ideas, wrongdoings, right doings, whole, complete, the absolute source of unconditional love. But whatever we believe God is, we project that out. So we decide whether we're worthy or deserving. Does that make sense? Did I run away from the question? I don't know.
No. I think we're great. We're perfect. We're kind of talking.
Yeah, can I share one thing? I'm talking too much. It was Easter this weekend, and I have some great books about yoga and Jesus. I think Jesus was an incredible yogi. And I was reading one by Stephen Mitchell, and I loved it. It was talking about, you know, when he's said to have said on the cross, "Forgive them, Father, for they know not what they do." And what it said in this book is that actually in ancient manuscripts, that line is not there. And as beautiful as we may think it is, forgive them for they know not what they do, it adds this piece. It's not totally aligned with Jesus's consciousness that God is love. Or, you know, you just turn, you leave, as soon as you come back, a party is thrown for you. You're welcomed back, right? So it has this little bit of someone needs to say, forgive them, or help us, or, you know, fight on our behalf. It was really interesting to read that. I'm like, oh yeah, it's like we're saying, you know, forgive them, they don't know what they do. Like we become beggars again, as opposed to, if God is unconditional love, and Dharma tells us a lot, he says, don't believe anything. He says, don't believe anything I say. Check it out for yourself. Actually, all three teachers say that. But he says, check it out for yourself and check it out through the lens of unconditional love. Does this make sense through the lens of unconditional love? That God would have to be convinced to forgive you, or does unconditional love already accept and love you completely?
So unconditional love, that's something you are a student of. What have you learned about unconditional love? What is that?
Yeah, exactly. You know, yeah. It is, you know, being in complete harmony with what is, I believe. I believe Katie embodies it. And she, no matter what is happening, she just loves everything. She talks about, you know, if you're in a plane and it looks like the plane's going to crash, it turns and starts going straight down to the earth. Like, if you're, you know, your only problem is what you're thinking and believing. So if you're thinking, oh, we're going to crash, you're screaming, ah, chaos. She's like, if you're not thinking we're going to crash, you're in the present moment. She says, oh, it's just a fun ride. Whee, you fall down. Maybe at the bottom, you leave the body. You don't remember anyway. You know, maybe you don't. She shares, someone held a gun up at her, and she does say, she's like, if I thought I could, if I knew I could outrun a bullet, I would, but I knew I couldn't outrun a bullet. So I just stayed. And people say, were you scared? She says, no, I wasn't scared. I didn't, you know, it could be the last few moments in this body. I didn't want to waste them in fear. So I was present, and I just looked into the person's eyes who was holding the gun at me. And she says, I fell madly in love with them. I saw someone who was so scared and so confused, and I just loved them. And, you know, she's still here. They chose not to shoot. But I think when we talk about the superpowers of the yamas, you know, the foundation of yoga, this ahimsa, compassion, non-harm, it's said in the sutras, when you're in the presence of a being that embodies that level of compassion, wild beings become docile in their presence. And I imagine potentially that's what happened, because that person, there was just love coming from her. You know, there was nothing for them to fight. They just felt that love. And Dharma tells us too, you know, the gunas, and I shouldn't say too many yoga words, but we often think the way we will find peace is by forcing or doing or making something happen. And in the Bhagavad Gita, it says that we'll come to peace by being established in the vibration of sattva, in this pure loving vibration. So Dharma says, if you hold a vibration of love, that naturally affects everybody around you. It naturally rewires the systems of those around you, as opposed to what the ego thinks. I need to go tell you what you've done wrong, how you need to change, which builds up more shame and judgment and keeps this battle. So, obviously I'm not there. Unconditional love, but I can see, I really believe it's the medicine. The more things we can welcome into our heart, that's what's going to heal this world, not pushing things away, but welcoming everything.
So out of all the different yoga texts and philosophy, what is most alive for you? What are you most a student of right now? For me, it's Ishvara Pranidhana, humble surrender to faith in the present. That's what I'm most passionate and leaning into. How about yourself? Out of all the yoga texts and philosophies, what is most alive in you? What are you most a student of currently?
That is a good question. I love the Bhagavad Gita. It's one of I just love that text so much. But if you're talking for like a piece, it sounds like you're saying a piece, then probably svadhyaya, self-study, self-reflection, and the reflection, the constant discernment. In the sutras, it says, the yogi constantly discriminates between the real and the unreal. And realizing anything I can see with my physical senses or experience with my physical senses, including these words I'm saying to you at this time, is unreal. It's relatively real, but it's subject to time. It's passing vibration. And our gross senses of perception are moving so slowly that they make it look like it's here for a while. But, this physical body, if I'm my body, which one? The cells are constantly changing. So am I the one that, when I ask the question, those cells, or am I the collection of cells now? Which body? You can't narrow it down. Anything in form, you can't narrow it down. It's only relatively real.
Yeah. Is it a feeling? That's what I feel. It's an embodiment.
It could be, but you know what? Even the feeling is a sense of perception.
Interesting.
Tricky business, isn't it?
Yeah. So we talked about Byron Katie, her most recent challenge, and how she overcome that. She was literally had a gun pointed at her. Let's talk about a challenge that you've overcome. You've talked about like the loss of your dance career, loss of a relationship, various challenges you've met along your journey. But let's just go over a recent challenge of yours that you've met and how you overcome that, just so listeners and people could just be just kind of see how you apply kind of what you've learned on your path to facing challenges and learning from them and moving forward.
Yeah. Well, life gives us challenges every day, doesn't it? There's something big or small. I still suffer from time to time of concern of what others think of me. And so Katie's 4 questions, she has 4 questions that you do. So if, for example, say I had the belief, I need my mom to love me.
Yeah.
Okay? And so I need my mom to love me. Her first question would be, you need your mom to love you. Is that true? And I'd sit in it, and the answer is just yes or no. One isn't better than the other, but it's just to notice, I need my mom to love me. And in the moment, I would probably say yes when I did this. Now it's resolved, so I actually have an honest no, but when I first went through this one, yes. And the second question, can you absolutely know with certainty you need your mom to love you? You sit in that. It might be a yes, it might be a no. And say, no, I can't know with certainty I need my mom to love me. How do you react? This is the most powerful question, I think. How do you react when you believe I need my mom to love me? So this is where you start to see the order of creation. That thought comes in, I need my mom to love me. And then the emotion stirs. This may be an emotion of anxiety, desperation. You go out, start trying to do things that she may please of, become a little less authentic, striving, whatever. You notice this, right? How do you feel? Disconnected, disempowered? Where do you feel it in your body? How do you treat yourself? Oh, I treat myself like an orphan, like there's something wrong with me, I'm defected, you know, all of this. And really let the ego have its voice. How do you treat your mom when you believe I need her to love me? Well, she's not allowed to have her own opinions. So I'm like desperate, needy, grasping, pulling, right? I'm not worried about her. I don't care about what's going on in her. It's all about me, right? So you sit, you notice that. How do you treat other people? You really sit and start to meditate and notice in a specific moment in time how that one thought affects so much. And you can go into past images and future images. And then when that feels complete, the next question is, who would you be? So you just imagine, who would you be if it wasn't possible for you to believe that thought? And the first time I sat in that, who would I believe? Who would I be if I, didn't have the thought, I need my mom to love me? The first words out of my mouth were bulletproof. If you don't need your mom to love you, I'm like, I don't need anyone to love me. I need to love me. I need to love me. I need to love me and accept me. I need to stay in my own business, right? When I'm worried about what my mom's thinking, I'm in her business and no one's here with me. I need to love me. I need to do what's honest for me and not worry so much about how others respond. I can still love them. I can listen, but not to let that push me away from my intuition, from my guidance. And then another turnaround is I need to love her. And that's our nature. We need to love. We are love. So if I'm not worried about trying to get, it's by giving that we receive. If I just love my mom, I'm content. So you realize, oh, I don't need her to love me. I need to love her and I need to love me. And those both feel truer then. And it's not to say that the first sentence wasn't true, but to me, both those other ones feel truer. When the opposite of a belief feels true, suddenly that belief isn't right, it loses its power. So it's not running you. And then the next time an idea like that comes up, you might laugh. That's funny. So every thought, Katie often says, every thought eventually that comes up is met with a question mark. It's too cold out, question mark. How do you know it's cold? If you're in the present moment, you can't know. To label something as cold, you have to have this past image of a different temperature and place that one on top of this moment. So there's two moments here, duality. But if I'm just meeting this moment as it is, I'm here present, I don't know what cold is. That's been conditioned on me.
I found it interesting that you use the term bulletproof. That's what you'd be if you didn't worry about what like your mom thought. I think that's how you used it. And the word that came up for me when I was asking those questions in my head and reflecting on that was freedom. And yoga is said to be the discipline of freedom. What does freedom mean to you? And how do we find it?
Exactly that. Freedom is knowing that the love, everything we want is within us. All the love we want is within us. All the direction we want is within us. And having the courage to listen and follow that. Yeah.
Beautiful. You had the courage to listen and follow your heart when you were stuck at that desk job and you realized, oh, wait, this is not for me. And a lot of people are in that scenario. they're stuck at the crossroads of should and must. Like the should, the
Mhm.
path of should is like what they've been taught by their parents or by school or by society, by culture, kind of the safe path. And the must is that knowing, that yearning, that truth in their heart that wants them to go travel or like go all in as being a yoga teacher or to do X thing. But they're stuck. What advice, what helped you push past that fear and like go all in to your must? And what advice would you have for someone at that crossroads?
Hmm. I think part of what helped me was that I had already lived a dream once, so I knew how full I could feel. I
Yeah.
had had a taste of it. But if you haven't had a taste of it yet in the physical, you can have a taste of it in meditation. Your imagination is power. And this is another amazing thing Dharma says. Where we are right now is the result of our past imagining. So
Uh,
we've been imagining, oh, life has to be hard work and I can't have this and it'll never work out for me and blah, 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 blah. Practice sitting and imagining getting everything you want and tap all your senses of perception into it. So you're feeling, what would it feel like when you have that? How would it sound? Is there a sound? Is there a taste? Is there a scent? What does it look like? Really see yourself smiling at yourself and really practice imagining it so that you're tuning to the vibration of having it instead of the vibration of lack. And this comes to, 4 times a year, there's a very special practice Dharma shares called psychic development. Psychic means intuition. So it doesn't, we're not holding crystal balls, but we're deepening our connection to our intuition. It's a sequence of breathing and meditation techniques to strengthen your energy field, your vibration. And then at the end of it, we do a visualization and you focus on something you would like to happen in your life. And the things that have come in my, this condo that I live in now, it was through that practice. I was looking for a place. I'm like, I want to live there. I sat in front of this building and did that practice and then let it go. And then shortly later, it just unfolded, that I assist Sri Dharma in New York. My first training with him, I'm like, oh, I would love to be one of his mentors and be able to sit and spend all this time with him. And when we did the practice, I sat and imagined that. And then very shortly after, I'm like, oh, wow, I have many students. One of my students was having a lot of financial issues and she was doing the practice on imagining getting a certain raise and she was visualizing her, herself getting the courage to ask for this raise. And before she could ask, her boss approached her and said that that was the raise she was giving her without even asking and that it was the biggest in the company. And then she kept focusing on money issues. And this year she got offered a new job with another massive increase. So imagination is power. And if you are thinking about unpleasant things, if you catch yourself meditating on what you don't want, we're all good meditators. Meditation, the first step of meditation is concentration. So usually we're concentrating on our problems all day meditating. I don't have this. I don't have this. I don't like my job. I don't like my job. You're meditating on that. You're going to attract more of that. When you catch yourself in that state, and it's too big of a jump to go to imagining what you would like to have, just stop. Go do something else. Break the circuit. You can even yell, stop, go do some jumping jacks, go to the gym, okay, play some music, but change. Whenever you notice that that's happening, stop it. There's a great Newhart clip. Stop it. You can say to yourself, stop it, and it'll come back as many times as that pattern comes back. Stop it. Stop it. Like you're training a dog. You don't hate the dog, but you bring it back to the pee pad as many times as you need until it's learned. Right? So really be intentional with your imagination. It is power.
So is that what you do with fear? Stop it. And when you experience fear, stop it. Like, so yeah, what have you learned about fear? What is your relationship
Fear.
with it?
Yeah, so sometimes I could do that. Sometimes I stop it. Sometimes it needs to be, there's a part, one of the causes of suffering is aversion. So the denial of fear can actually make it get stuck in us. So often I'll even do the Byron Katie's questions on that. What am I afraid of? I'm afraid If I quit my job, I won't find a better job. And then I go through the questions. Is it true? How do you react when you believe I won't find a better job? I'm miserable. I suffer here. I hate my job. How do you treat your family when you believe that? I'm kind of grumpy around them. I'm not present. You start to really notice the effect that this belief has. And
Yeah.
then who would you believe if you couldn't have that? I'd be open. I'd be excited. I would think, oh, maybe something new could come. I'd notice, hey, actually new things do come in life and it is always changing. And then you do the turnaround. I could get a better job, right? But before you do the turnaround, you do allow, often in that question 3, how do you react when you believe the thought? Emotions flow, which emotions, they're energy and motion. They're meant to flow. It's healthy. When you cry, oxytocin, endorphins are released, but we don't want to cry and then keep feeding the thought that's making us cry. It's just a natural allowing everything to be welcome.
Amazing. Thank you for sharing that.
Thank
I have a
you,
final,
Derek.
I have a final few questions that I ask every guest, and so we're at that point. I'm just going to ask these final few questions. The first one, through all the highs and lows that is this hero's journey, what has been the greatest life lesson you've learned on your path that you feel called in this now to share with us?
Greatest life lesson. Miracles can happen. I've thought I've been stuck so many times, and a change can just happen like in a second. Your whole life can change in a second. Yeah.
Faith. Have faith.
Yeah. Have faith.
Beautiful. In 3 words, how would you describe the experience you are having on this earth? So it doesn't have to be a sentence, just but 3 separate words that would describe the experience you are having in this reality plane.
Playful, curious. Everything. I don't know. Whatever that is.
Beautiful. Playful, curious, and everything. Blah. Okay. Final question. We've played around with time. We've examined your past. We've examined the present, and let's fast forward into the future. Let's fast forward into the future, and we're going to find yourself alongside an 85-year-old Sam Manchulenko. Who is that 85-year-old woman? Where are you? Who are you surrounded by? What is the legacy you've left here in your 85 years? And what are the predominant feelings in your being?
Well, I hope to be like Sri Dharma. He's 85. He still does all the poses, the handstands, the crazy things. He's a prankster. He plays. I see myself on the beach somewhere, maybe playing with my nephews and maybe their kids and more kids, and just really loving life, being so grateful for all the gifts that we get in this body. Yeah.
Beautiful. And the predominant feelings in your being is that 85-year-old woman.
Gratitude, gratitude, joy, love.
So I just invite
Mischief.
you, mischief. I just invite
Yes.
you to mischief. I just invite you to just close your eyes and just take a deep breath and just feel into that 85-year-old woman and to those feelings of gratitude, joy, love, mischief. You can smell the beach, the waves of the beach, loved ones all around you. And just sit with her for just a moment and just feel how good that feels to be that 85-year-old Sam. And then I'm going to bring us back. I'm going to bring us back to the current now, the present moment. And that 85-year-old woman, she sends you a message, Sam. What does 85-year-old Sam say to current day Sam?
You're doing awesome.
You are. You're doing awesome. And it's been such a pleasure to connect with you, learn more about your hero's journey to now. For people wanting to connect with you, they can find you online at samtheyogi.com, the same thing on Instagram. And yeah, they can find out where you're teaching, your teacher trainings, and all the amazing things that you're doing.
Yeah. Thank you, Derek. Can I share one thing?
Yeah.
My favorite course I share every Mondays, I do a course called Reality Check. It's a half-hour philosophy teaching. Just because the cause of suffering is not knowing who we are. So it's intended to, like, in the middle of the day, let's get together, remember who we are, and connect to our off the mat practice, throughout the week. So I really encourage anyone who enjoys this kind of discussion, they're welcome to join that.
Amazing. Amazing. To close every episode, we bring our fist in, a digital fist bump, a stepping into the winner circle. Boom. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Have a great night. I'll see you soon.
Yeah, see you on the mat very soon.